Warchant Gameday. Good to be with you. Obviously, we are not currently, but in a weird way, we are at Hotel Indigo. Excuse me. Rough start. But we're recording this while we're at Hotel Indigo. So this is playing now, but we're there. So if you want to swing by is the point. Please do. Come on by. No fault of our own, no real fault of Hotel Indigo's, but they had an internet line cut, and so we had to make do. Definitely wanted to have content for you on Florida State Miami Day, so we're doing that now. But we are at Hotel Indigo. The food, the drinks are all still happening. Come on by. The atmosphere is still good. Overlooking Doak Campbell Stadium, obviously, and those tailgate lots as they begin to fill up for what should be a great game. By the way, I see you already put it on there. That's the first thing we had to see, which is Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are going to play today, guys.
Yep.
That is a big deal. That's a problem for Miami, to say the least. That is a big problem.
This is a special day, man. You just feel like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel if we take care of business today. It's not that I'm not concerned about going down to Gainesville, playing in the swamp for game 12 of the regular season, but I think if you get that close, you're gonna touch the sun. So today, make sure you get the job done. There's a lot of health questions that still remain out there for Miami. Defensive back health. They've got a couple of corners who left the NC State game with injuries last week, including their best one. Their quarterback situation, of course, is something they talked about all week. But the thing we focused on is, all right, can this offense succeed without a couple of key receivers? Nope, that question is gone now. We don't have to worry about, can the offense do enough against a good run defense? If they do have their two guys. Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson are here. They're playing. That's good news. I think they looked pretty close last week. They weren't limping around the sidelines at Pitt. At least Keon wasn't. We know that Johnny's been dealing probably with something else. To have both of them today sets a great tone because we got that news, I think, in the 9 a.m. hour this morning. So it's just, you're firing up either game day or your Marching Chiefs playlist. You're loading up the truck or going to the grocery store, maybe the liquor store for your if you're staying at home in a different part of the country. That's the right way to start the day. Not with, I hope they play. Oh, crap. Warchant.com reported it. They're playing. Let's go.
Well, if you think about when those guys play, Tom, they have a total EPA of number 7 in the country when they play. So Florida State is one of the best 7 offenses, in essence, in the country when those two gentlemen play. It's a difference maker, to be sure. I think there's evidence that, in fact, some of those stats are skewed because Johnny's missed when Keon has played.
Yep.
There's only been one game where they both missed. I think you could look at it as a top 5 offense for sure when they both play. So it's fascinating. They just create so many mismatches and change the way a defense has to play you. And Miami, Tom, does not change the way they play anybody. It'll be curious to see if they choose to today.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. I did a study this week on the site, and depending upon, if you want to look at the season-wide stats, there are some games where Miami doesn't bring a whole lot of pressure, but most of those instances are when they're outgunned opponents that Miami was going to run away from. But looking at the 2 key games this season for Miami, in my estimation, Clemson's game plan is a little bit different because they have a freshman quarterback in there. I think it impacts the way you play complementary football. So A&M in week 2, we all circled that game in the preseason to see what is Miami, or should we be worried about them? And then the North Carolina game on the road. If Miami was going to have hope of making the ACC championship game for only the second time since they joined the conference 20-plus years ago, they needed to beat North Carolina on the road. Okay. Texas A&M, Connor Wegman was the starter at that point. It wasn't Max Johnson. They blitzed him nearly 58% of the time. Consider the fact that the NFL average is around 30%. And the college average might be a little bit above it, but it ain't 40. And they went 58% of the time with blitzes on the dropbacks. That's criminal. That's nuts. So that's one thing, though. It's Connor Wegman. That's not a dynamic offense. We all know that that's why they brought in Bobby Petrino, and it still's not working out there. How about a top 5 pick in Drake May? They blitzed 51% of the time against a top 5 pick. 51% of the time. So I would expect Miami to bring pressure today. We'll see how much they do. Now that Keon and Johnny are back, does that mitigate their strategy? But still, better than a coin flip. They're bringing the heat today.
Keep in mind, and this is where that percentage will be interesting. They know, because they've seen it up close and personal, what Jordan Travis is.
Yep.
And the evidence for any offensive or any defensive coordinator is pretty overwhelming that you don't want to blitz Jordan. And I just will find that absolutely fascinating if they decide to do so. The evidence is overwhelming that he's going to hurt you if you blitz him, either by diagnosing pre-snap or by making your blitzer miss. And then at that point, Katie bar the door. Because when you blitz, your corners are taught that the ball's coming out, and it's coming out now because we're bringing pressure. So you don't have to cover 15, 25 yards down the field. You're going to be able to jump on a pass. That's what it's designed to do. But with Jordan, if he makes you miss, the big play is there, and he's not afraid to go for it. Sometimes to his detriment, he is going to go for it.
Yeah, so his numbers against the blitz this year, frankly, I thought he was a little bit better against it last year, but he's still very, very good this season. So he completes over 63% of his passes. His touchdown to interception ratio is 10-1, and he completes his yards per attempt is over 9. 9 yards per attempt against the blitz is a hefty figure.
Yeah, it's not all hot routes.
No, it's not. No, exactly right. And air yards per attempt is pretty hefty as well. So, and we know that from earlier in the season when you're talking about the downfield shots. But the thing that I would come back to there is, okay, a lot of those downfield shots did not hit. They didn't hit it at a 63% clip.
Oh, God,
so
no.
Where is he completing all these passes? I mean, like, you still have that per attempt figure, but you're going at 63%. That's humongous. So I want to see what the plan Florida State has for the blitz will be today. Is it about quick game to Jaheim Bell? Is it about hitch routes? Is it about quick slants? Is it about the screen game? Mike Norvell's ready for this. He, by all accounts from the people around the athletic department, when you get to rivalry weekends, he tightens the screws a little bit. He might be all fun and games for many of the weeks during the season, and he is a jovial person by nature, but he gets a little bit more intense in terms of the preparation so that they can time release everything, and hopefully they will do so today at 3:30 on Bobby Bowden Field.
Well, and I think the thing we've appreciated all along, Tom, is the fact that Mike Norvell sets these games apart in the same way that the fans do. You know, most of us are accustomed to hearing coaches say things like, it's just another game. It's about us. We got to prepare a certain way. We got to be focused on our jobs, etc. But Mike doesn't do that. He doesn't pretend that it's just another game. He understands that the Florida State-Miami game is special, that the Florida State-Miami game has historical repercussions. It changes the direction of programs. He understands the importance of winning these games. So I absolutely agree with you that he ratchets things up in games like this. And I think historically he's always had a good plan in this game. Even when you go back to when Florida State wasn't a good football team, they came out both halves with a good plan. They just didn't have the players to execute it for a sustained period of time. But they were able to make some plays even without the athletes that they have now. Now he has a lot more options, and so I think he has fun with these moments.
He does. I mean, to me, and this is a minor criticism, I know nobody's allowed to criticize anything we do because we're not in Ho, but remember 2 years ago, there was a fracas before the fourth quarter. Between the third and fourth quarter, Miami walked out onto the field, and we matched them, and it was strange. And little did we know it would end up being a classic fourth quarter. In which, even though neither team was competing for much, you had a classic fourth quarter with 4th and 14 down the stretch, and you win the ball game. But if you recall, last year, I think it was in the spring, they did a little feature with Seminole Productions where Norvell is with Jordan Travis in a theater, and they're watching it, and he says, I'll be honest, you know, as this thing happened and matriculated out over to the field, he said, I loved it. I loved being in the intensity of that moment. And for me, I was like, well, I hear you, but you're the head coach, man. Let's not start a fight between the third and the fourth quarter here. Maybe you want to calm the guys down, but that tells you, it gives you a window into how different a game like this is, because I don't think he would condone against Wake Forest or Pitt or Syracuse guys meeting between the hash marks between quarters. I don't think he'd be like, I can't, for Pitt, you know what? You got to gear up and do that. I love it. But he did for Miami. And that was his first taste of it, as we recall, because in 2020 he had COVID and he was unable to go down there and preside over a butt kicking that we received. He had to sit at home and watch it from television. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think he cherishes these moments. And I think there's been so many moments that have allowed for Coach Norvell to become accessible to the fans. And that was one of them, Tom, that you're describing, where you get some insight as to the way he looks at things and the way he understands this rivalry in the way he views Florida State history. I think it's been important. I've loved the fact that he's ratcheted things up and had the intensity in these games that goes above and beyond a Wake Forest matchup. It doesn't mean that he's ill-prepared in those other games. It just means that he understands the gravitas in this matchup. And, he also, I think, has welcomed the fact that the fans, this atmosphere today is going to be unreal.
Yep.
This is a 9-0 team. This is a team that can see the finish line. We're talking about the chances, and the very good chances, if they play well, of going undefeated in the regular season. Mike knows what that means. I don't think he's going to get lost in the midst of it, but somewhere along the way, over a cup of coffee, staring out as the sun comes up, he's thought about the fact that he could preside over a 12-0 season. You know how few there are in the country that could ever say that they've coached an undefeated regular season? Doesn't happen very often. Even for the greatest coaches, You see that they typically lose a game somewhere along the way. Bowden for years was always wanting to get the undefeated season. He talked about it. And when he finally did, and remember we went wire to wire, he talked about how much that meant to him. It's hard to do. Upsets we watch every Saturday. Upsets happen all the time. And Florida State's been able to avoid it. And now the finish line is obviously clear and present. You win this game, as you said all week long, Tom. If you're 10-0, you're 11-0. Because you got North Alabama next week. So you're 11-0 in essence if you walk off the field today as a victor. And all you have left is a trip down to Gainesville, which will be a beleaguered, beat-up Florida team at that point. Because I think they lose again today. I think they lose next week. And I think, Florida's in trouble right now.
Yeah, that was he was listed as probable on Thursday. Now Jaden Daniels is officially active for today's game against Florida. That's a kickoff at 7:30. Yeah, you can see the writing on the wall here. Speaking of the victors, too, this schedule is no chicken crap Michigan schedule either. If you go 12-0, you earned it. You scheduled 2 games out of conference with the SEC. You have to go on the road and play Clemson, who just, destroyed Notre Dame, the toast of everybody's strength of schedule argument for Ohio State. Like, really? Yeah, this is a real schedule. And you play at Florida to close out the season, the Swamp. I mean, they might be playing for bowl eligibility there that day, Jeff. They're going to be fired up in Gainesville. They want to go they want to go 6-6 for the second consecutive regular season. That they're hoping for that. But this is a real schedule, a real one. And so if you can go 12-0, man, that'd be an incredible accomplishment because you won 5 games 2 years ago. You go from 5 to 10 to 12 in the regular season. Good God. And the importance of today in that regard is you can message more aggressively with recruits. And they've got so many of them here. Michael Langston's been covering Florida State recruiting for 15 odd years at warchant.com, the state of Florida for better than 20 years. He says, based upon his recollection, this is easily the most talent in Tallahassee in one weekend that he can remember. You're talking about 12, upwards of 12 5-star prospects on campus, 115 kids. A lot of them are considering Miami. A lot of them are considering Florida. What a message you could send in the next 2 weeks if you hammer it home today against the Canes for the second year in a row.
Ran into Michael last night at our event at the Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. We want to thank everybody that came out for that. Wow. It was nice to see so many people. It was packed.
People were, the back deck. I have not seen the deck at the happy hour time that packed at Corner Pocket in a minute. People are here in droves, sir.
People are in town. They're excited. They understand what Florida State's accomplished. I think it's an appreciation weekend as well as rivalry weekend. So ran into Michael last night, and he was talking about that. He said, Jeff, the momentum just keeps building. It just keeps building. He said, every day during the week leading up to this game, they would get notice of another kid who wanted to come to town. I mean, there are kids they had to turn away. So there were that many kids coming to town where they, you can't be there for everybody. At some point you got to shut it down. So they had that many kids coming to town today. I think it's right on a day like today in a rivalry game like this to kind of take a step back and get the 10,000 feet view, right, of what Florida State's done. We've talked about it all week long on the Jeff Cameron Show. I mean, to watch this team 2 years ago and to see this team now, it's night and day. It's a 180. I mean, we had so many flaws on the 5-7 team and so many things that we had to get fixed. And talent level was a big part of that. And then you think now, just 2 years removed, just a season removed, which was last year, you had – I don't know, what would you guess, 10 to 12 NFL draft picks on this roster right now? Maybe 15?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about this upcoming draft class, 2024 NFL draft, it's at least 10. If the Battle's End is unable to retain a couple of dudes, you're looking at a dozen or more. But if you can do your job and retain some people, and I think there are 1,300 members right now. If you could push this thing to about 2,000 before the season's over, because that's their goal, you probably retain a couple of guys and keep it at 10. But there are more NFL prospects in the wings. Finally, like, you're starting to replenish the way real programs do that are in the top 5. It's not a bunch of Band-Aids or quick fixes that are good. Like Jermaine Johnson's a great fix, and so is Keir Thomas, and so is Jared Verse. But you're starting to see replenishment in some segment groups, and hopefully now with the momentum of this year, you start to see that fortification across the board.
Well, there's more work to be done, to be sure, and they've got areas that they're going to have to hit this offseason. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but if you're going to be a dominant program the way that Georgia is now, the way that Alabama has been for more than a decade, the way that Ohio State reloads annually, you know that you've got to have that kind of a program where the guy on the 2 deep is a future NFL player. The guy on the 3 deep is a future NFL player. That's where you want to get to. It's hard to do in the modern era. Kids tend to transfer when they're not playing, and they tend to be impatient. But I think when you're winning, A, it's easier to sell. And then B, when you're churning out pros, which Mike is about to do, it is a big spotlight on your program for kids that are contemplating where they want to go to school. And Florida State, for the longest time, during the down years, during this rebuild, was really not that program. It was Alabama. It was Ohio State. It became Georgia. It was a few other programs, but it wasn't here. It was Oklahoma. But now Florida State is in that conversation with every one of these kids. They're not going to get every one of these kids, but they've got a chance to get some of these kids now, and that's all you want. You want to put yourself in a position to matter amongst the creme de la creme of high school recruiting. Florida State has that. And we know that they've also hit home run after home run, as you just alluded to, in the portal. So you have a chance to replenish all of this very quickly. That's why I said at the start of this year that even though this season looked like a huge opportunity and maybe a boom or bust kind of year, like let's go all in and see if we can't win the whole thing, because you had a lot of the dominant programs changing quarterbacks and having to replenish key positions. So you knew Florida State could get in position to maybe win this thing this year. But I didn't think it meant that Florida State was doomed if they didn't, because I feel like Florida State is going to find the right people to come in here and keep this thing abuzz. Florida State, to me, is a playoff team next year. A lot of people disagree with me on this, and I've had this conversation at places like the Corner Pocket. I just trust that Mike Norvell is going to go out and get 5 or 6 guys to make a huge difference on next year's roster. I know we have a top 5 recruiting class coming in. Not all those kids will help right away, but I think you look at this roster and you see some kids that they'll retain. You'll be okay up front on the offensive line. That was an area that I was worried about. And I think you'll replenish that defensive line, and I think you'll improve yourself at linebacker, quite frankly. So if you do that, all of a sudden, if you get a modicum of decent play at quarterback, you're good, because Lord knows the backfield's good and the wide receiving core is promising.
Yeah, and I think the tight end room will be just fine next year as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of pieces to like, and your margin for error is much wider. Essentially, you need to be a top 10 team next year, like for the balance of the season, in order to make the playoff, because the College Football Playoff Committee is accepting, I believe, the 5+7 model. So 7 at large plus 5 conference champions. So, I mean, do the math on that. One of those conference champions is not really a top 10 team because it's a group of 5 program. So if you're hovering around 9 to 10 to 11, you're right there.
You're right there.
And that would be the goal for next season. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that and say you won 10 games, you beat Miami's ass again today on the way to 12 in the regular season, and hopefully that means finishing the job in Charlotte and going to the playoff. And then, oh, guys, this wasn't a one-trick portal pony thing that Mike Norvell was doing. Look at what we are now. That way we go down to Hard Rock next year. We play Miami again, and they say, I thought when Jordan left and Keon left and Johnny left and Trey and Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, like, we would have an opening. Damn it. These Noles are just, they're still here. Well, why are they still here?
Yeah, at that point, you have proven, think about it. They won 10 games a year ago. If you win 12 games this year, maybe more, you come into next season as a program that is expected to be a 10-win program. Forever around here, that was the goal, bare minimum. You win 10 games, and how many successive seasons can you win 10 games? And somewhere along the way, if you're a 10-win-a-year type program, you're going to have the right mix of senior leadership and elite talent at the right positions, you're going to win your fair share of those close games against the 2 or 3 teams that have equal talent. If you're in position to do what we're talking about accomplishing here today, get a 10th win, you're typically in position to be a playoff team and to compete for national championships annually.
Yeah, when you put it that way. And look, this is a much more formidable Miami team than last year in some areas. Quarterback play is a huge part of it, and we don't know what the hell we're going to see. We expect to see below average quarterback play today, but they've got more in the tank than they certainly did this time last year when we played them and we beat their ass 45-3. But when you say it aloud that you could go 10 for 10 this year. You could go 10 for 10 this year. When your 17th consecutive game, I mean, my Lord, or is it 16? And I think it might be 16.
It'll be 16, yeah.
But at any rate, I mean, when we won 29 in a row between 13 and 14, when we were national champions and we went 12-0 that next regular season, I wondered, just because of the nature of college football, when's the next time we're going to win 15 in a row? Like, that's really, really hard to do. And Mike Norvell has done it. He's already done it. He's already won 15 straight at Florida State. And, man, if the ball bounces the right way over the next 3 weeks and obviously the conference championship game, you could be flirting with 20 come the first of the year. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Well, his rebuild has taken far less time than anybody would have guessed. And so I think we're all smiles as we go into the stadium today, but we know how fickle this thing is. And if we get into the nuts and bolts of the game itself and how Miami can win the game, and, they could. I don't predict them to. Neither does Vegas, given the 14-point spread. But I think that the possibility still exists that they come in and run the ball. Florida State, total EPA against the run, 95th in the country. EPA per play against the run, 97th in the country. Per game, 95th in the country. They're a little bit better at overall success rate. But they have some dubious numbers against the run. We've seen that this year. Now, it's not usually for prolonged periods of time. Sometimes it's a quarter, sometimes it's a half. But generally speaking, Florida State gets adjusted and starts to shut down the run game. But they've had plenty of stretches where they struggled to do so early and they struggled to do so for a sustained period of time. So for Florida State, today, the whole game starts with, do you stop the run? Because if the answer is yes to that question, we already have a yes to the other question, which was, how healthy are you? Well, they're healthy. They got their stars back. We know that. They're relatively healthy, this team today. I think Bless Harris is going to play. So I think they're pretty healthy along the offensive line. It seems like Darius is going to play. Mo's going to play. So you're pretty healthy, again, along the offensive line. The answer to that being yes, and then the answer to stopping the run, if that's yes, Florida State wins comfortably. If they cannot stop the run, if they struggle to stop the run, Mario will not go away from it. He is at heart an offensive lineman who wants to run the ball. That's all he's ever wanted. He talked about that over and over again when he first got to Miami, that this is the way he was going to build the program. Today would be the day, if you're him and you're trying to get this turned around, today would be the day to showcase that toughness, to challenge Florida State's toughness, because you would keep Jordan Travis off the field, which is your number one goal if you're Miami, because Jordan Travis has beat up on everybody when he's been given the opportunity and enough at-bats in a game. So to me, that's where the whole game is today. If you're watching in this first half and you're going in the stadium today, just know that's the key number there is, what do you do against the run?
So Dominic Robinson a few weeks ago did a breakdown on Florida State's defense, and he's privy to some numbers that are hard to find, like official numbers on how often a team runs this coverage or that coverage. It's that next level of scouting data that you can get that even the media don't really get to delve into all that much. Florida State's blitz rate was not that high, not as high as you'd think. Like, for example, we're talking about Miami going half the time, which is crazy. About a month ago, when he did the analysis, it was 27% of the time we would actually blitz. But we play a ton of man-to-man. We play a ton of man-to-man. And he broke down how we run man-to-man at nearly 50% of the time. It was 45, 46%. And then you look at the staples of college football and defense. And we're talking about Kirby Smart at Georgia and then Nick Saban at Alabama. Those teams run man about a quarter of the time because it's just hard to be in condition to run man every single play. It's impossible, even with the depth that they have. Modern football says you got to play zone a little bit more. We don't do that very well. So we play a lot of man-to-man to account for the fact that we're not all that great at zone. Why do I bring all of that up? Well, there's another layer to it with blitzing. We're talking about, Miami could be bringing pressure, and what does that do for Jordan? Well, wouldn't you make Miami prove, whoever the quarterback is, that they can throw to one-on-ones and they can win those one-on-ones, and you would stack the box to stop the run? Like, I get they run zone, so if you pick the wrong gap, it could be a home run in that situation. But I don't know that I sit back and try to assert myself that way and make them prove to run 12-play drives. Because the best thing they can do right now, even if it's an 8-play drive that takes 5 minutes and they punt, that's a win.
Flip field position, run clock.
Yes, flip field position, run clock. I think you get downhill and you attack the run. I think you do stack the box today and say, all right, Tyler Van Dyke, I don't think you're healthy enough mentally or physically to make the throws. And if it's Emory Williams or Ja'Cory Brown, I don't think you can handle the atmosphere to make the throws. So I'm coming downhill and I'm attacking the run, and I'm trying to get off the field.
Well, it would truly be stunning if it was Ja'Cory. I can't fathom that he would be on the field today. There's been no indication that he's going to play.
I don't think so, but the question is, if TVD is not healthy enough, do you want to put a freshman in that situation for his second career start? Like, I mean, they're between a rock and a hard place. They're between a rock and a hard place.
The last time we saw that young man, he was on the wrong side of 45-3 in a highlight that will live in infamy. So I don't know, man. I think you probably do. I would start the freshman. I think he's got the ability to get out of trouble. He can run around a little bit, and he's healthy. So you don't want to play injured players, but listen, they've rolled Van Dyke out there when he was clearly hampered by injury numerous times, including in last year's game against us.
Yeah, well, if he started today, would it be like the 6th time they've rolled an injured Tyler? I mean, he's gone, man. There's no way. Miami fans, if you're watching this, I'm sure you won't miss him. Probably. I can't imagine that this marriage lasts beyond this year. This is toxic from the word go with what he's got going on there.
I would think he may not view it that way. I do think he's a tough kid. I think he wants to play. He wants to be out there. He probably is begging his coaches to play. I'll give him that. I wouldn't do it. And if I were his representation, I would view this as toxic. I don't know that he does, but if I were his representation, I'd be like, this ain't good for us, guys. They keep rolling you out there and making you look bad because you're hurt trying to make plays in games that you're losing. And all we ever get are highlights of you looking foolish. Last week really was something to behold. To watch a kid who I do think is tough lay down in the pocket because he's seeing ghosts. That is proof of brokenness.
Well, and you get into the red zone twice, one of which he throws an awful interception. That's a touchdown. I mean, he somehow found an interception on a touchdown that's open.
Yeah.
And what that can do against an NC State offense that doesn't do much. Like, if you come into that game on Saturday and you prepared properly, which Miami's and Mario Cristobal's in-game coaching has been criticized for a long time. But what's the race to if you go play? I don't care that it's up there in the house of horrors for many teams. 17, 14?
Yeah.
You telling me that my freshman can't do that? You're telling me that somebody else can't get me to 14 more than this injured soul over here? Apparently not. Apparently that would be the argument you'd make that he starts here. Because you could have started Emory last weekend and had a much better chance to win than in today's scenario. So that would be the argument you'd make, that they're going to still go with Van Dyke.
On that note, Tom, Miami really hasn't been on the road all that often. You think about this now on the season. They've played, 3 road games? They had the North Carolina game on the road, which they lost. They had the road game last week against NC State. I think they've maybe played one other road game against Temple. Against Temple at the start of the year, early. That's not really a road atmosphere. This will be by far and away the biggest road atmosphere that they have faced. This is a real college football atmosphere. They have not faced that.
Well, yeah. Now they have a tough existence like the LA Chargers, where every game's a neutral site game when you play Norvell. But yeah, this is going to be the most hostile road atmosphere that they see. There's no doubt about that. And the reason I think that they're going to be downhill on defense is in that road game against North Carolina. Carolina starts the second half on a 24-0 run. Miami's leading at the break.
Yeah.
Winning at the break 17-14. North Carolina scores the next 24 points. The 2 shot plays to Tez Walker for touchdowns are against 4-man rushes. One was a simulated pressure, one was a traditional 4-man rush, but they were both in the end 4 dudes rushing the quarterback. I think at this point, Lance Guidry says, if we're going to go down, we're not going down with a 4-man freaking rush. We're going down swinging, which could get fun for Florida State today because Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are available today.
Yeah, and so we thought as we were broadcasting from the Hotel Indigo before we realized the internet problems, we figured we were going to get this news from the press box, from Ira, from Corey, as they made their way into the stadium to watch warm-ups. But to wake up to this news today that Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson are both active and ready to go is obviously music to the ears of Florida State fans everywhere. This is a much different offense when those two guys play. It's been a minute since we've seen them both out there together. I mean, think about it. Johnny's missed the last 2 weeks, so it's been a full 3 weeks since we've seen these guys play together.
Yeah, it was Duke, and Johnny was having a really good game that night.
And then he got hurt, yeah.
He's been so much better at catching the football. I'm not trying to will something that we all, shake our heads at, but it's just true. The hands catching, the snagging of the football, routine catches, also difficult catches, which he was always good at. Just the manner in which that he brings the ball in has looked so much better from about week 4 to now. He made a couple catches against Clemson in big situations. But at the beginning of the year, you thought, oh, no, same old Johnny. Like, it's going to be great, and then it's going to be awful, and he's still going to go for 115 yards. But you're going to say how many more were left out there. He's been much better. So I hope that everything with him health-wise in terms of what he can do for focus and health are where they need to be, because he's going to get some chances in one-on-ones today. And we know what Keon's about. That dude is going to have a 5-minute highlight reel for his time at Florida State, and it will be 13, 14, maybe 15 games strong, and that's it. But his highlight reel is immense. Everything from one-on-ones, going up over the top, stiff-arming a poor joker against Wake Forest, punt returns. And that's another thing having Keon back for is monumental today. You have him in the punt return game, because we did not look confident in the punt return game last week at Pitt. It'd be nice to have a steady presence back there, because we should expect a lot of those punts coming Florida State's way from Miami's offense.
It's a good point. We were basically, I guess, olaying every punt last week. We just admitted we couldn't field them, and we just pointed at them and made sure everybody saw where the ball was bouncing, not because we were going to do anything about it. So, that does change the game when you're starting on your own 5 repeatedly, because you let the ball roll 22 yards, which happened last week. We all remember that existence from a year ago, which was so maddening. So Keon has been kind of understatedly, and at least in terms of the way we talk about it, really key in the return game. He's been huge. And, by the way, let's find out today, and we don't know the answer to this, is Deuce Spann back? Because if he's back, our kick return game is phenomenal with him returning kicks. Nobody else, just him. When he returns kicks, things are special. No,
agreed. And I get that. Obviously, we've got an interview here in a second with the Irish delegation from the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. But before we do that, it seems like we're always returning that first half kick. So if the trend continues, it's a minor thing that drives me nuts. It's not our fault. They're coin tosses. But last week when they again our kick return units out there to start the game, and you see 29, I'm like, well, I love Rodney Hill, but not in this spot. Where's 5? What the hell's wrong with 5? And then the officials tried to call us for having 2 number 5s on the field. I'm like, no, man, one of them's not even in the building. We don't have 2 number 5s on the field. That can't be. So hopefully in the first half, before the game starts, 15 minutes on the clock, and we're going to be returning the opening kickoff again, we see Deuce Spann. But I ask you, when you saw that news this morning, where did your confidence go from? Was it maybe a 7 to a 9? Was it an 8 to a 10? When you saw that both Keon and Johnny were going to play, how'd you feel about that?
Oh, well, yeah, obviously I was like every other Florida State fan, just elated, understanding that it changes the dynamic of the game. I mean, it drastically alters the chances that Miami wins the game. When you go to the doctor's office, a lot of times they talk about things that you can do to prevent certain things, and they usually speak in percentages. And they'll talk about, your blood work. And I remember having a conversation with my doctor, and they're always worried about stroke or heart attack, right? When you get to be a certain age, and they say, well, right now your blood work would indicate that you have a 1% chance of doing that, but we can give you this medicine, because they're always pushing medicine. We can give you this medicine or this medicine and lower it down to 0.5% or 1/3 of, whatever it might be. Well, if Miami had a 25% chance to win the game today, when they got word that Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson were both active in starting today's game, that probably went from 25% to 10%, right? 15%, something like that. I mean, it had that kind of a significant. Yeah, you see, I did retweet that. That was my reaction, Tom, right there.
Richard Simmons, which, hey, in a Florida State Miami Day, let's celebrate all Florida State alumni. So there
That's
you go.
right. Look at my man. Look at my man. Happier than hell. That was it right there. As soon as I saw it.
It's also Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day to everybody out there. I don't know that Richard Simmons is a veteran of anything more than a theater company, but yeah.
That one was perfect when we saw the word from warchant.com, and that was my response. If you're wondering how I felt, that's what it was. It was to retweet that with that GIF. How could you not? I think that's going to be key to this game. I think it's going to be key to the game against Florida, and I think it'll be absolutely the thing that gets you over the top if you find a way to win a playoff game.
No, it is because you're going to have to win one-on-ones at that point. It's almost as though the journey we're going on as an offense is going to come full circle, where there's an over-reliance on the one-on-ones early in the season, and it drives us nuts because things are open underneath. Then a couple of these guys go down, and you start to see the building blocks of the offense, not the tall ones, the little guys. And these underneath throws, the quick slants, the screen games, and it starts to build together. And now you see that there is a middle ground that we can still accomplish here in the passing game that we didn't do in the first couple of weeks of the season. It'd be 3rd and 4, a dude's open underneath, and we're chucking it down the field 35 yards, and you're saying, why? Jordan, why? But now when you get to the end of the schedule, and if we can complete the dream here, go 12-0, then 13-0, and make the playoff, if you play a Georgia or a Michigan or whoever, you're going to need the one-on-ones to be the difference. Yeah. You're going to come full circle.
When you get to that level, which is where we want to be, and if you keep winning games, you will be in that situation. You're talking about the fine line between winning and losing really being about star players making plays.
Yeah.
The stars show up in those big moments in these games. If you're equal otherwise, it's about your stars making plays, in particular your quarterback. So Jordan Travis would have to play phenomenally well, which he has in both LSU games when you think back on it, which he did in last year's game against Oklahoma in the bowl. I know Oklahoma went 6-6 last year, but they have athletes. And so you're talking about guys that can match up with your players, who makes plays. And the same thing against Florida. So these are the moments that you rely on your stars. It's why you go out and get these guys. It's why you secure the services of a Keon Coleman. It's why you took a chance on Johnny Wilson, who hadn't done a lot at Arizona State, but you saw those physical tools and thought, that could be the difference between winning and losing a game. He's an asset. I mean, who's 6'7" and runs like that? So, this is what you brought in a Jaheim Bell for. This is why, frankly, you opted for Kyle Morlock, even though Biscuit had a better camp. You thought his upside was greater than that of Marquiston Douglas. I can't argue that. I think long-term it is as well. I think in the NFL it is, obviously. But they wanted to fast-track his development, so they started him from day one.
Yeah, the Morlock thing, you say the name. Sometimes you feel something in the air. There's a little charge in the air. It's like a lightning bug in the dusk up north. When you said Morlock, because of last week, and I know that was about a 15-yard catch that he turns into a 63-yard gain, but when you're thinking about all the pressure that Miami likes to bring, man, it might be tight end 2 that's open, not tight end 1 that's open for a shot down the field. And maybe it is a seam shot to a guy like Kyle Morlock today. I've been talking all week.
Remember the throw, Tom. Remember the throw against Wake.
Yeah.
It was the best throw Jordan's had this year until he one-upped himself and threw the ball to Chakai over the right shoulder. That was insane. Yeah. So those 2 best throws of the year are those 2 games.
And that's where now these players are slotted where they should be in terms of the progression. You get Keon and Johnny back, and now Jakai's your 4 or your 5. Maybe your 3, I guess, in the slot. But, I mean, this is where if Miami brings a bunch of pressure, those are the players that can make the difference for you because they're going to cover your best players. But now how about your 3rd option, your 4th, and your 5th? And I think it's very important that Kyle is peaking at the right time, and then that Jakai had the game that he did last week. Because, again, if Miami's going to stack the box and bring pressure, I think the bubble game opens up, and it's nice that Jakai's confidence is in a different place now after going for over 100 yards last week against Pitt in multiple ways. Deep shots, underneath, over the middle of the field.
Yeah.
It's just, if Destin is still banged up, and I anticipate he probably will be, Kentron was limited last week, that's important now. You put a slot receiver where a slot receiver should be, which is at the number 3 position, number 3.
I think it's a good call on Morlock. I think it's another day for Jaheim Bell to have a good look at 4 or 5 catches and see if he can make anything happen with that. He's a guy that's also played hurt. I feel like we talk about this with our roster every time we have a discussion about offense. There's the caveat about a guy playing hurt. whether it's the offensive line. Earlier in the year, it's Jordan Travis playing hurt. It's Keon Coleman out last week. It's Johnny Wilson these last 3 weeks. It's over and over again with these guys. You just want to once again envision what this looks like when everybody's right. You know, when your offensive line is the 5 that you wanted it to be, when your tight ends are not running around out there, ankles taped beyond reason because they can't hardly move their foot without it hurting, with Johnny Wilson not playing, not concussed. I mean, it's just over and over again with these injuries. So God help Miami today if this team's healthy.
Yeah. Well, that's correct. That's correct.
Seriously. I mean, people will talk about this Florida State team as being inconsistent. Yeah, well, it's inconsistent because they're always hurt.
Well,
they're always hurt.
I would also argue the second halves of football games are pretty consistent. And it's not just about the result that we get, but outside of a flu game, you look at all the others, all the other 8 games. What do they have in common with the third and the fourth quarter? Yeah. We stomp your ass. We stomp you. We respond.
The fourth quarter has been amazing to watch. Florida State's defense just shutting teams down over and over again, giving the ball back to the offense with an opportunity to keep chipping away, trying to find whatever it is you got to find on that day. What's the option? What's the defense giving you? Mike is good at finding that as well. I mean, I think we've said a lot of very positive things about Mike Norvell over these last 3 weeks and really all season. But I think it's just important to know that you have a schematic advantage going into most games because Mike Norvell is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. Now, he's the head coach, and he calls the plays, and I know his OC is Alex Adkins, but we know the deal. Mike Norvell has designed this offense, calls this offense. It's Mike Norvell. And the bottom line is you now hear opposing coaches bring this up. This week's defensive coordinator for Miami brought it up. Last week, the head coach for for Pitt brought it up. The week before, the head coach for Wake Forest brought it up. It keeps getting brought up that Mike Norvell is formidable.
Yeah.
He's a difficult answer for a defense.
Yes. Across the country, he's got to be in that elite class already. I think what he's done this year has fortified that belief. Like, it's funny. It's like you get more credit for coming close when you finish the job later. And what I mean by that is
you go back, you say, oh, look at all that time. Yeah, all those times, right?
Yeah, like if you win a couple of conference titles, but you can't win the big game, then you win the big game. Those conference titles, all of a sudden, you're proud about those. And you're yeah. So as Mike is ascending here at Florida State, he was, that offense was elite at Memphis. They win all those games like 56-45 or something along those lines.
Didn't stop anybody. That's why we were questioning the defense coordinator hire.
Is he Lincoln Riley? No, he's better. He's better than Lincoln Riley in terms of building a staff. That dude has had all of the assets in the world to work with at 2 institutions that are the blue blood of blue blood in college football. He still can't stop anybody. So to me, Mike Norvell is already a better program builder than Lincoln Riley is. Now it's debatable as who's the better offensive coordinator. Sure. But when you get to a place now where you have weapons, and Florida State is this electric on offense, they're going to average over 40 points a game for the season, which
we predicted going into the year.
That's correct. And then you take a look back into the past and you say he had nothing, and he was able to run for 2 or 3 explosive runs a game. And look at what he did with Ja'Shawn Corbin. Might have been his best playmaker on offense outside of Jordan Travis. Like his best non-quarterback was Ja'Shawn Corbin or Trayshawn Ward. And he was still able to do this, and this. And then he won 10 games last year with an unproven receiver core that was getting better, but nobody wanted Johnny Wilson. Nobody wanted a lot of the guys, Micah Pittman. And they came to Florida State where they hadn't proved a thing about what they could do in the passing game. And then you combine it with this, man, that resume is sparkling. And in retrospect, it's going to look better, and people are going to recognize it'll be late. We saw it early, and we talked about it early. But this is one of the elite offensive minds in college football, and he's here. And somehow we plucked him away from a group of 5 team before anybody else got wise about it. And that's good job, Florida State.
Yeah, he was a candidate for the Arkansas job, and then for whatever reason, it didn't go his way. Obviously, they hired one of our favorite coaches there at Arkansas, but Big Suey is indeed. But and shout out to him, by the way, for winning the road game against Florida in the Swamp. That was a big win for Arkansas. Devastating loss for Florida.
Big win for us. Yeah. Look, man, if a kid named McCray, and I'm not talking about Moses,
he'll be here.
If he signs with us next month, you can thank Woo Pig Suey for getting that ball rolling.
And he is in the house, and that is the other side story today, is how many of these 5-star kids are here. are on the sideline today, are in the stands today, are part of this weekend, are part of what will be phenomenal in terms of atmosphere and overriding joy surrounding the football game. The fervor in Doak Campbell Stadium, Bobby Bowden Field today will be something to behold for these kids. Now, we're going to run an interview for you that I did just yesterday. It is from Aer Lingus College Football Classic representative, Brendan Meehan. He is the guy. He is the ringleader. He is the man. He is the director. And he is a fun guy who I got to hang out with in Ireland, got to hang out with in Dublin. We went to Leopardstown track together and talked to all things Ireland while we watched the races. You'd be able to do that too if you go to Ireland next year for Florida State, Georgia Tech. We're going to play that for you, and then I think Tom and I are going to come back and wrap it up, put a ribbon on this pregame show. So that's right now. This is me and Brendan Meehan. Look at your screens, everybody. There he is, Brendan Meehan, commercial director of the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. I got to talk to this guy in Ireland when I was over in Dublin, and there we sat, I believe it was Leopardstown, Brendan, and we talked music together, and we talked about football, we talked about life, and we talked about how awesome Ireland was and is, and we talked about your trip over here. So welcome to the States and welcome to Tallahassee, buddy.
Thank you very much. It is great to be here, and it is great to be here on such a big weekend for Florida State University. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, okay, so I've told everybody on my show since we've come back, how much fun we had. And I know Florida State fans are really looking forward to the 2024 kickoff against Georgia Tech there in Dublin at Aviva Stadium, which is something to behold. We got the tour of that while we were over there. I want to get your perspective on being here for this rivalry game and also give you a piece of advice, Brendan. First of all, yes, Miami does wear your colors. There's the orange and there's green. But if you see their fans run, they're hooligans. Run the other way, sir.
That's what I'm being told. I've heard that from a few different people. So don't you worry. We're Florida State University this year, and where I'm from, in Galway, my own county, would have the same colours as Florida State University. So I'll be very much wearing their colours. But it's brilliant to be here. We're over here with a group of Irish ambassadors. So we've a couple of we've three very high profile sports stars, Hannah Turley, Ian Madigan and Kieran Kilkenny, who would have played rugby for Ireland, they would have played soccer for Ireland, and they would have been very successful playing GAA, which is our local sport in the States. So to show them around, to be over here on this weekend, and to give those guys a sense of the size, the scale of college football, the importance of this match. At the moment, I'm sitting here in the athletic center, and we're getting tours of the weight room, and we're meeting the dietitians and the nutritionists, and it's just given us a tremendous sense of how important it is, not just football, but the whole athletic division here and the whole athletic department. And it's an honor to be here, and we're really, really looking forward to tomorrow. And then obviously, lastly, the weather is significantly better than it is back home, so that's always nice too.
Yeah, I rather enjoyed my time in Ireland because partly of the weather. It's so hot here in July and August. It was beautiful in Dublin. And so you guys return the favor to us when we come back next year. What is normally a hot month here will be beautiful in Ireland. 65 degrees, nice and cool. It was glorious.
Yes, no, August is good. August will be beautiful, and we'll have, for all your fans and for all the Florida State fans and the traveling Americans, we put on a wonderful show this year. We put on a tremendous show last year for Northwestern Nebraska, and we will put on a wonderful show for Georgia Tech and Florida State fans that are thinking of traveling and that will travel next year. And certainly August, the end of August in Ireland, would be, from a weather perspective, the nicest. We've lovely long evenings. It won't be getting dark until after 10 o'clock at night. It gets light early in the morning, and we're already putting the pieces. We already have the plan well in place, and we're continue to work on that to attract as many American fans over as possible and to have the trip of a lifetime, which it will be if your fans travel, when your fans travel.
I was going to say, I think it's more when as opposed to if, and I've watched this thing grow. I learned a lot from you guys while I was over there, and how popular college football is becoming, how it's covered. I know it continues to grow. I believe over 40,000 Americans probably came over this last time, right, for Navy and Notre Dame. Is that right?
Yeah, Jay, it was the greatest movement of US into Europe for a single sporting event. In peacetime, we had just under 40,000 Americans, which is a staggering figure, an absolutely incredible figure. And We'll be looking, obviously, being open and honest, there's a Notre Dame effect there. The Fighting Irish, there's an affiliation with the country. But we will be looking for north of 30,000 to come next year. And there is no doubt that college football is in the rise over there. The success and how you guys are and how Florida State are doing this year is incredible. And there's a huge amount of people gaining interest and looking and saying things like 9-0 when 6 months ago they didn't clue what 9-0 meant. And this kind of stuff is exciting. And in fairness to Georgia Tech, they're winning games they shouldn't be winning probably, and yet they might be losing the odd one they should be winning. But they're having an okay season too as well. So the fact that we have two teams that are doing quite well, and certainly that we've one of the teams traveling next year is ranked number 4 in the country at the moment and is in such a run. There is excitement. There's huge excitement above. Amongst the Irish fans who, as you say, are learning that the NFL has become huge, as we all know, in Europe. It's huge in the UK and Germany. It's growing in Ireland. Obviously, there's Pittsburgh Steelers announcement recently, but college football is also increasing in Ireland, and the lay person in Ireland who's into rugby and soccer and our national sport GA is now showing a huge amount of interest in it. And the Aer Lingus College Football Classic has played a huge role in that.
Brendan, I experienced probably no greater hospitality than I did when I was in Dublin. The fans there, the people there, the citizens there are wonderful people, and they're very, very open arms about welcoming people in to Dublin and to see all that it has to offer. And, of course, the island itself, everywhere we went, got a chance to play golf at Port Marnock. Obviously, I joined you at Leopardstown and watched horse racing. It was incredible. But almost everywhere we went, they were intrigued, they were interested, they wanted to learn, and they wanted Americans to come over and enjoy Ireland. Talk a little bit about what people can expect if they go ahead and purchase tickets. I know my producer just put it up there, Noles to Ireland, up on the screen there. Seminoles to Ireland.com is where you can go and find that. What can the guy that's on the fence that says, I want to go, but it's a commitment, I got to figure out, what can they expect if they do go next year?
They can expect a trip of a lifetime. It is very easy to get here, to get to Ireland. Yesterday, we flew into Orlando. We did a 4-hour bus journey up. And there's loads of different airports, which Aer Lingus, obviously as our title sponsor, fly from, and other airlines nearby. So it is not difficult to get there. You arrive, Ireland is 5 hours ahead. US flights arrive in the morning, so you'll have a whole day ahead of you. Dublin, the capital city, is on the east coast, but Ireland is a very, very small island. So there is nowhere on the island of Ireland that is less than 4 hours from Dublin. So you take the Orlando-Tallahassee comparison, and you can get down to Kerry and Cork in the southwest. You can get right up to the north to see Belfast, to learn a bit about the history of Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and Donegal, and out west to places like Galway and Cork. We would know from the US people who traveled this year that they would have stayed on average in around 6.7 nights. They would have, toured 3 or 4 different destinations throughout the country, and they would have had an amazing time. There was so much to do from an outdoor perspective, as you said, the scenery, the visuals, golf, visiting the local towns, learning about the history. Dublin itself then, as a city, as a capital city, over 1 million people. And it's a very compact city, easy to get in from the airport. And the stadium itself then is what we call a walking stadium. So it's about 1 kilometre from downtown Dublin city centre. So, in terms of transport out and that kind of thing. And then the traditions that we've tried to introduce as part of the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, like tailgating Irish style, the music, the use of the cheerleaders and the bands. There'll be so much going on around the city. We developed an app last year, and we had over 52 events in around game week for fans traveling. So it's a wonderful opportunity to travel to Europe. It's a wonderful opportunity to travel to Ireland. And we are known as the land of the Céad Míle Fáilte, which is the land of the 100,000 welcomes. And we will roll out the green carpet for everyone that travels from the United States.
I can attest to that. It was simply fantastic. It was the second time I had the good fortune to visit Ireland. I would strongly suggest, if you guys are on the fence, check it out more, Seminoles to Ireland.com, to figure it out. But make sure you get your plans made and get over to Ireland. Brendan, I hope you have an awesome time at the rivalry game here against Miami. I'm sure I'll see you around. I'll be in the press box. I know you're in the president's box. I'll try to sneak in over there and say hello. But it's good to see your face again.
Will you come in and meet us for a pint tonight at the block party? That's okay. Where we want to see you.
Okay, I'll find you over there, partner. You be good. All right, good to hear from Brendan Meehan. It was a pleasure talking to him again. Hadn't seen him since July. Listen, I don't get paid by Aer Lingus. I don't get paid by Florida State. You can go to the game if you want to go. But if you're thinking about it, if you're undecided and you're kind of in between, I will tell you, having been over there, both for my honeymoon many moons ago, and then also this past July with the gang here at Warchant. It's a great time. The people of Ireland is what I'll speak to. I've been to almost seemingly every county in Ireland between my 2 trips. But everywhere we went, the people are so welcoming, and they want to know your backstory, and they ask you about why you're there, and they're excited to have you there. They're very proud of their country, and they'll tell you cool things to do, places you can go. Everything's accessible. It's a small island. Basically, you heard from Brendan there. If you get in a rent a car, you can be anywhere in Ireland in 4 hours. Anywhere. Every part of it is doable. It's like a trip from here to St. Pete. You can make it happen. So if you're thinking about it, it's a good time. Just keep that in mind. I'll vouch.
Yeah, I'll vouch for it after I do it next year. Looking forward to getting out there. I think the itinerary is at least for Monday through Sunday of next year. But I'm trying to tack on, Gene, if you're watching, earmuffs, I'm trying to tack on maybe the Friday before to spend a couple of days exploring where my grandparents came from. I've got grandparents from the north and the west.
Yeah.
I've got some exploration to do. But the best part is when we go live on the Jeff Cameron Show, the wildly popular Jeff Cameron Show next fall, it'll be 6 p.m. local time. We'll have a nice little evening pint, and we'll discuss what we did during the day. That you know what that means? Golf at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. You could even tee off at 12 p.m. and still make it back to.
I'll just say this. I golfed the lovely links course, top 50 in the world, Port Marnock. And Aslan and myself did that, took that in, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Tom, I know you're going to do it when you get there. You're going to have to do it. It's unbelievable. I'll probably never get an opportunity other than next year when we go to do anything like that again. To be golfing on a top 50 golf course in the world in and of itself is cool, but to have it be so different like links golf is, and to be on the Irish Sea where we are, where that's located, and it's only 30 minutes from downtown Dublin. It's really cool. So if you're thinking about that, guys, that's one of many courses that are there and one of your many options as well. It's
going to have such a unique energy, and it's like today. Today's energy is special. We felt it Friday night. We felt it last night at Corner Pocket Bar and Grill. It just, to me, this is why we do what we do, for moments like this. And it's always fun to break down sports for a living. Don't get me wrong. But after the slog that had been the latter part of the last decade and into this one with the pandemic, it's like a force multiplier of sadness. To be back in this position where you see people by the carloads rolling into town at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m. We had some people, the Matthews family, Steve and his father from Chicago. Yeah. They came in Wednesday, I think. Our friend Chris from San Diego flew in on Thursday. Like, people circled this game hoping it would be exactly what it is, that we're undefeated and we've got a shot at the college football playoff. And it's just the vibes last night were so positive. And I've got to imagine as we get set today, we'll be there at Hotel Indigo for the meet and greet. But that's the most positivity I've felt around a Florida State game with the amount of people that were here in a long, long time. So this is going to be just an outstanding day. And I know Doak is going to be berserk around 3 o'clock.
Let's remind everybody, we already made our picks on the Warchant report, but I believe I said 38-14, 35-14, something like that.
38-14, I think.
38-14. I feel like I'm a broken record these days with these predictions. Florida State's totals are generally around 50 in these games. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Florida State scores in the 30s most days. They did not last week. And the defense has been real good, so I don't know why I would vary all that much. And I think the news today that you see down at the bottom of your screen with the Keon Coleman and Johnny being active emboldens my pick. I feel good. I feel good with that.
I do too. I just, the offense has a chance today if the defense can get off the field. And Miami's got a good running game. Like they do. They don't pass pro very well, but they run block pretty well. So if you can get off the field with regularity, Florida State could touch into the 40s. Florida State, dare I say, could touch into the 50s. And the reason I say that is because this offense, to me, while we don't consistently run the ball all that well, the passing game has all the layers now. All quadrants, if you want to break it up into quadrants or like they do on Pro Football Focus where there are 9 boxes like tic-tac-toe, we are hitting all fields. And missing these 2 key wide receivers, I think, helped us remind ourselves, both as a coach and a quarterback, that you can hit these spots in the field and do so and allow a guy like Ja'Kai to go make a play, or Morlock or Jaheim Bell to go make a play, make one guy miss and make something happen in space. I love that the offense is seemingly all together now. And I think also formationally, we know we're a pass first team, so we spread it out. That helps the run. The key to a blowout is just getting off the field defensively. If we can do that, this is going to look like Syracuse. This is going to look like Virginia Tech. And I hope it does. My official pick was 38-10.
Buckle up, everybody. Enjoy it. Get loud. Have fun. Thanks for watching the Warchant Gameday Pregame show. A little bit different variety. We are at Hotel Indigo as you watch this right now. Shaking hands, kissing babies, saying go Noles to everybody there. The drinks are cold. The food is delicious. The atmosphere is still great. Just internetless for now. But hey, it's okay. I think it'll still be fun. That stadium atmosphere, you get that vibe, that energy from Hotel Indigo. So it's always good. Stop on by if you're in the area and you're watching this. Tom Wayne, good job out of you. Thanks to everybody again for watching. Until next time, don't forget, by the way, post-game show, Gene and Tom, they'll join you about 10, 15 minutes after the game ends, and they'll do the wrap and take your calls and all that good stuff. So I'm excited to talk to you guys on Monday. Be well, everybody.